Whether you're a fan of deathcore or not, you probably already heard people saying that it's not real metal, or that it's straight up garbage, or maybe that it's just a bunch of zeros on the guitar, and you might have wondered, why do these people feel so strongly about it? Why do people hate deathcore so much? Well, as a deathcore fan myself, I'll do my best to address it all in this video. If it's your first time here, my name is Yan. I do videos about extreme heavy music, mostly focusing on deathcore and metalcore, so if you enjoyed that specific kind of content, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. It helps so much more than you think. Okay, so first, I think we need to go back in the early 2000s, when bands like Despised Icon would mix hardcore and death metal for the first time together. It wasn't well received because they were hardcore dudes playing in front of a death metal crowd, and those scenes were not meant to be mixed at all. That being said, as much as it was controversial back then, it was nothing compared to the MySpace deathcore scene in 2007-2008, back when deathcore kind of officially became a thing, and believe me, the hate got on another level. You see, in the early days, a lot of deathcore bands were actually heavily influenced by metalcore bands, which meant that most of those bands had seen kids in it. And as much as it sounded different, way more brutal and extreme, as far as the death metal community was concerned, it was considered to be the same thing as bands like Attack Attack and stuff like that. They couldn't take any of it seriously because most of those bands were basically kids goofing around and having fun. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I love bands like Infant Annihilator and I Set My Friends on Fire, but as we all know, the death metal scene was known to be dark, serious, and obscure, exclusively made for the outcast. So I'm sure you can imagine the general reaction when they saw some kids with skinny jeans and swoopy hair coming in their scene. That being said, I never really understood the hate towards bands like Suicide Silence and Job for a Cowboy because they were basically doing their own version of brutal death metal to me. But as I've mentioned earlier, what I really think happened was that most people associated deathcore and metalcore together, and let's be honest, metalcore was pretty goofy back then. Which I think is a big part of the reason why it got so much hate back then, because if the bands don't take themselves too seriously, who will, right? And just to add insult to injury, a lot of those bands would cover popular rap songs. So as you can probably guess, it was an absolute outrage to quote-unquote real metalheads. And I know some of you might think that it has nothing to do with deathcore, but believe me, during the MySpace era, it was just one big scene, the Trash and Burn tour being a very good example of that. So now that you have the actual context, what did they all have in common? The breakdowns. Pretty awesome, right? Well, not for everyone. You see, as much as we loved the breakdowns and we were there for it, the death metal scene hated it. Which was very one-sided, by the way, because so many of us absolutely loved death metal. In fact, most deathcore bands were exclusively influenced by the death metal scene, but no matter how good the death metal riffs were, if you had any kinds of breakdowns in your music, you lost all credibility to them. In other words, they saw the core in deathcore and metalcore as a representation of the breakdowns, and if you had any core elements in your music, it wasn't considered real metal. And I'm saying wasn't like if it was a thing from the past, but believe me, people are still saying stuff like that now. Which is blowing my mind because the breakdowns came from classic metal bands like Slayer and Pantera, but I guess it just didn't matter to them because it was an over-the-top version made by some teenagers. Which brings me to my next point, the age factor. Believe it or not, the simple fact that most of those bands were formed by kids in high school really contributed to the hate in a major way. It was a youthful, brand new energy, and the gatekeepers were not having it.
Now deathcore is fucking horrible. It's not good music. It's just a ripoff. A fucking ripoff of death metal with breakdowns and simplistic riffs.
From their point of view, it was a new generation of kids coming in their scene as intruders almost, which made them very upset. They saw us as basically emo kids trying to be death metal, which, let's be honest, was pretty accurate in most cases. But what nobody understood at the time was that deathcore was its very own thing. It wasn't trying to be a better version of death metal or something, so judging it and reviewing it as such never made sense to me. Every single generation is gonna switch things up a bit, that's just how it is, and to us, deathcore was a mix of everything we loved. So in other words, it was the beginning of a new era, and with the rise of MySpace, deathcore and metalcore took the spotlight and became extremely popular on a mainstream level. And as we all know, if there's one thing metal gatekeepers absolutely hate, it's mainstream music. It's kind of the same type of situations with pop-punk bands like Blink-182 not being considered real punk and whatnot. I mean, the simple fact that those bands were popular made them despise it even more. Of course, little did they know, hating on deathcore just made it more popular, ironically. Because the thing is, for example, if you comment on 50 different videos of Immure saying they're terrible, even though it's in a negative way, you still contribute to its reach and popularity. And funny enough, the hate never really came from the bands themselves. In fact, tons of very iconic death metal bands would bring upcoming deathcore bands with them on tour. It was very unfortunate because at a certain point, just being associated with deathcore was a bad thing, which is why we saw so many of our favorite bands changing their sound around 2011, 2012. And I know a lot of you might wonder why I'm talking about the MySpace era so much in this video. Well, simply because there are a lot of similarities between now and then. For instance, just like the over-the-top moments made deathcore popular back then, brand new over-the-top moments made deathcore popular now. The thing is, no matter how you get people's attention, the second it gets viral, hate is gonna come with it. That's just how it is. Tons of people are gonna love it and tons of people are gonna hate it, but you kind of need both to really thrive. And sure, there are different levels of hate, I'll give you that. But at the end of the day, If you're evoking any kinds of emotion with your music, I think you're doing something right. And with hate being one of the strongest, most passionate, consuming emotion, it only makes sense that it's such a big factor in making stuff more popular. What's really funny to me is that while they spend their time hating on people they don't even know, all those bands are thriving and living their dream every single day. If you ask me, the only real power all those haters really have over you is the amount you're willing to give them. So I want to end this video by saying that it should never discourage you from doing anything in life. Be who you are, go for your dreams, because remember that no matter what you do, someone somewhere is gonna find something wrong with it. But the beautiful thing is that by being yourself and doing what you really want to do, you're gonna find your people, and trust me, they're gonna be worth any amount of hate you could possibly get. How do I know? Because I'm living it with this channel. I mean, every single day I'm gonna see some hateful comments, but you know what? I'm not doing those videos for them. I'm doing my content for you guys, for people who appreciate who I am and what I do, and that's what really matters. Why am I saying all of these things? Because I care, genuinely. I want people to be happy, to be themselves, because it's so sad and horrible, the idea of living in a world not being yourself, pretending every day. That's not a way to live, and yet so many people are living like that. I don't know, it just pains me to think about it. So please, be yourself, go for your dreams, be who you really are. Who cares about people judging you and coming after you? They're just being insecure. You're doing something that bothers them, and it's their problem, not yours. So again, please, never be afraid to be yourself. And on that note, that's gonna be it for today. Thank you so much for watching. It was such a fun video to make, and I hope I answered the question of why people hate deathcore so much. No matter if that's the case, please let me know what you think in the comments, if you want more videos like that, if you think I'm wrong, if you have stories to share. As you all know, I love reading your comments. Of course, I also want to say a big thank you to all my Patreons. You guys are making a very big difference, and that's the best way to support me, hands down. If you want to join our community, we have a Discord server, the link is in the description. We also have a live Deathcore podcast on Twitch every Wednesday, so feel free to coming out with us, it's always a good time. And with all that being said, I'm finally gonna stop talking. I'll see you in the next one.